I would like to begin this talk by reading to you a quote by Dr. Ursula Franklin. I start from the premise that we are living in a very difficult, very interesting time, a time in which a major historical period is coming to a convoluted end. In this talk, I draw on Dr. Ursula Franklin's 1989 Massey Lectures, The Real World of Technology. CBC Massey Lectures, The Real World of Technology, and will argue that while others have insisted that the best way to promote technology in the post-Cold War era was through privatization of science and technology, Franklin warned against capricious use of technology and its social and political implications. Her deep concern with the social impact of technology was based on her close attention to the sociality of technology. Franklin proposed technology as formalized practice, which has a direct link to culture. Viewing technology as cultural practice reveals the specific values, attitudes, myths, and interests, and a mindset which are embedded in the very designs of technology. Seeing technology as formalized practice allows us to appreciate complex and multifaceted and often subtle ways in which dominant interests shape how new technologies are designed, what new technologies get public funding, and what specific social values, attitudes, and mindset are prioritized through technological means, and which values are marginalized or are altogether excluded. Technologically mediated marginalization and exclusion of those who are deemed unimportant, women, indigenous peoples, Blacks, and others, deeply troubled Franklin. Contrary to the received wisdom of the supposed neutrality, objectivity, and functionality of technology, Franklin's lecture series, The Real World of Technology, reveals that there are inbuilt, top-down hierarchical features which makes technology a powerful instrument of control and domination. Inbuilt exclusionary dimensions of technological designs can be executed without facing serious challenges from the very public that's expected to use these technologies. Additionally, technologically mediated exclusionary features can often prevent active participation of ordinary citizens in the process of funding and designing new technologies. So why is Franklin's Real World of Technology still relevant? As we grapple with the rise of anti-science movements, online proliferation of fake news, conspiracy theories, climate change deniers, anti-vaxxers, and global pandemics such as COVID-19. Dealing with these challenges require new ideas, new technologies, and democratic process of public engagement in the funding, designing, and uses of new technologies, especially in the domains of information technology and the internet. Some social commentators blamed social media for the rise of what has come to be known as Trumpism. Trumpism is still a poorly defined term that refers to the use of online platforms to share and widely disseminate extremist views and conspiracy theories, and that these groups were claimed to have tilted the 2016 US presidential election results in favor of Donald Trump. There are also yet to be proven claims that state-sponsored Russian hackers have also played a critical role in the election of Trump in 2016. Why Russian hackers did not help Trump in 2020 presidential elections is not clear. What's clear is that now it has become much easier to use different types of technologies to undermine democracy and weaken the legitimacy of science and technology as essential social goods. So when I was asked to give this TED Talk, I wanted to imagine how Ursula Franklin, who died in 2016, the same year Trump came to power, might have explained the rise of Trumpism, the power of social media, widespread skepticism of the efficacy of science of science, and the rise of fake science. As such, this talk is celebration of the life of the late Dr. Franklin. It is also a reflection of how her work has influenced my own research and teaching practices. I first met Dr. Franklin in 1997 when I was a master's student at the University of Toronto. In my first graduate essay, I explored the relationship between participatory technology and participatory democracy. Several life-changing experiences led me to ask the relationship between technology and democracy. I came to Canada in the early 1980s as a refugee from war-torn Somalia. I was in Winnipeg when the Cold War collapsed. I became hopeful that the world will now focus on building technologies for peace instead of the technologies for war. And I was particularly encouraged by the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, which took place in June 1992 in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. This first post-Cold War conference gave me a new hope that with the end of the Cold War, that massive resources which were once deployed for the research and development and the mass production of the technologies of mass destruction can now be turned into a peace dividend and can be redirected to the making of new technologies which promoted the peace and democracy. But my euphoria was quickly dashed when the Canadian federal government started cutting funds to many environmental groups I was part of, such as the Winnipeg Center for Sustainable Development. Now the new government priorities included cutting the deficit and promoting globalization, and the future of science took drastic turn for the worse. Instead of deploying public resources, which were once used for the production of the technologies of war, now researchers and academic institutions were encouraged to seek partnership with the private sector in order to keep their institutions and research programs afloat. It was very clear to me that this policy shift happened with little democratic deliberations, and that these policy shifts were made to promote the interests of private corporations at the expense of the public. It was in this historical context that I became keenly interested in the relationship between participatory democracy and participatory technology. This was one of the themes which Dr. Franklin delineated in the real world of technology. I was interested in gaining better understanding on how dominant scientific and technological paradigms and designs facilitate exclusion and marginalization, and how we may imagine different paradigms, values, and values and ideas which could promote participatory democracy and participatory technology. I was so inspired by Dr. Franklin's work that I wanted to meet and interview the author of this amazing work. With the help of my political theory professor, Dr. Frank Cunningham, I was able to meet with Dr. Franklin in her office at the Massey Hall of the University of Toronto. Dr. Franklin was born in Germany right after the end of World War I to a progressive family who instilled in her the values of social justice, fairness, and critical thinking. Both she and her parents ended up in Nazi internment camps, but luckily all of them have survived. As a Holocaust survivor, Dr. Franklin dedicated her life to promoting peace, social justice, and inclusivity through her research practices. Meeting her in person and reading her work had a profound influence on how I think about designing inclusive and engaging courses, how to critically analyze the social implications of technology, and the ways in which new technologies, such as social media, shape social values, which sometimes lead to destructive consequences. Dr. Franklin's work continues to inspire me and helps me in the process of turning socially important issues into teachable moments. In 2012, I published a journal article entitled The Scientification of Skin Whitening and the Entrepreneurial University Linked Corporate Officer. In this work, I critically interrogated the interlocking strategies of scientific entrepreneurialism and academic capitalism in cutting-edge innovations in molecular biology, biomedicine, and other life sciences, and how drastic financial cutbacks forced universities to find other ways of generating revenues. As lucrative and unregulated market, skin whitening by technology generates much needed cash for universities and proprietary investors alike. The globalization of skin whitening is greatly facilitated by web-based advertisements, which are often sponsored by pharmaceutical and cosmetics companies. Franklin's assertion that technology shapes our values is reflected on many online marketing discourses which shape public views about whiteness, beauty, aging, as symptom of decline. This promotions entice consumers to participate in anti-aging wellness and whiteness consumerism. Yet these promotions are based on pseudoscience claims with no verifiable evidence to back up. Consequently, despite lacking regulatory framework and verifiable efficacy, skin whitening by technology became a lucrative industry. Thus, unlike anti-vaxxers and climate change deniers, the skin whitening industry faced little public scrutiny because the primary target of such industry is women. I conclude my presentation by proposing Franklin's theory of earthworms as a metaphor for change, wherein ideas for social and ecological justice can be cultivated, nurtured, and disseminated symbolically in similar ways in which earthworms materially prepare the soil as nitrogen fixers without which no seeds can grow. As a metaphor for progressive change, Franklin's earthworms is an insightful way of examining social and cultural implications of technology as a way of doing things. Franklin's earthworm theory is pertinent to examining the interconnectedness of a number of crises the world is facing today, such as climate change, inequities, poverty, mass displacement, extremism, and ultranationalism. What's unique about earthworms? Earthworms have no eyes, but they could see because their light receptors allowed them to see things in the dark. Earthworms also have no ears, but their bodies can sense the vibrations of animals moving nearby. Using earthworm as a metaphor for progressive change allows us to think outside the box and imagine old and enduring problems in new and innovative ways. The earthworm can also be an inclusive metaphor, which allows us to use different knowledges and experiences which go beyond the Eurocentric epistemology or vision. Thank you.